so special fascination for you.
It's an honor to be meeting you all. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
That's a very dangerous thing because we come up with one thing or the other.
Always welcome.
Though this is 10, should we wait a couple of more minutes?
Maybe 2-3 minutes. 2-3 minutes or later. I think most of us are here.
Yes.
Kaustubh is there and then Rakesh is there. As I told Dr. Raghu is not in proper frame of mind. I had a word with him today morning. He felt a little scared. मैंने कहा सर आपको क्या हो गया, आप तो टाइगर्स के साथ रहने वाले. बोले भाई ये दूसरा टाइगर है, ये इससे बचना बड़ा मुश्किल है. So he's still in Indore and he will not be in a position to join, but he has extended his greetings for the session and to all participants. And he has promised that definitely as and when things go fine, he will be in a position to be with us at some point of time or the other. And the next, obviously, next opportunity is going to be the World Environment Day on 5th of June. So probably we will look for these persons, especially Kaustubh, because this time we were thinking in terms of engaging students to do a workshop or any presentation on the occasion of the World Environment Day, and we will be sitting at the back and just watching. So I'm just hinting at the students to get in touch with Kaustubh and then that's regarding this.
Oh, by all means, this is very exciting.
Yeah.
Any day. I always used to say, I still say it, Neerajji, that after finishing my PhD, I became completely useless. It's the students who keep getting us going. So, yeah. I mean, anything that we can do to get to work with students, interact with them, I'm more than happy to help with that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So can we have this order of the presentations that Dr. Rakesh Kumar first and Dr. Kaustubh after that? Can we do it like that or should we reverse it?
I'm happy with whatever is okay with you.
I think
it's
Rakesh sir, you can go first.
Rakesh ji, that would be fine. Okay.
Unmute kar lijiye.
Yeah, I'm okay with this.
Yeah,
okay. Sure. Yeah, so Sangeeta, you can begin now.
I think we should begin now.
Yeah,
sure. Okay. So greetings and a very warm welcome to all the esteemed invited speakers of the valedictory session today. I am Sangeeta Mittal, the organizing secretary of the conference committee and joint secretary in search and host and chair for today's session. Welcome to all my colleagues across disciplines and universities on joining this session. I extend most cordial felicitations to our collaborators, mentors, and well-wishers from the environment and heritage conscious community that has stood with us through the previous 6 national conferences on biodiversity and climate change, and this series of national conferences on natural and cultural ecosystems, the valedictory session of the second conference of which we are hosting today. Indebted and grateful indeed to all the invited speakers who have come forward to share their very valuable expertise with us. The conference is coming to an end, and what a journey it has been. 9 sessions, broadly 9 professions and vocations from which our resource persons hail, 30 speakers, 12 in-search team members, 15 student volunteers, and many esteemed colleagues, participants, and enthusiasts have made this conference. 2 of our very valuable patrons are featuring in this finale that we have today. A valedictory session brings on the tone, tenor, and trajectory of the conference, while we shall attempt to present one at the end of the valedictory session. Now it is time to listen to our eminent speakers of today. For the attendees, a few very general announcements. You're please requested to keep yourself muted. Please switch off your video as well. Please post your questions in the Q&A section. Please do not chat unnecessarily because that distracts the speakers. The question and answer session, as is the protocol in this conference, shall be taken once both the talks are over. So please do post your questions. We shall take them all together after the two talks. And the feedback form link is going to be circulated towards the end of the session. So please be patient, and it is mandatory to fill up the feedback form for your certification. After these few preliminary announcements, it is my pleasure and privilege to introduce the first speaker of today. We are privileged to wrap up this conference with eminent academicians and activists with a long and renowned career in the lap of the Himalayas. We have Dr. Kaustubh Sharma and Dr. Rakesh Kumar on our learned panel today. The conference has been somewhat COVID hit, as Dr. Fayaz Khudsar and Dr. Raghu Chandawat have expressed their inability to come to the conference as they grapple with personal and family health issues. Missing both and wishing them a speedy relief, we invite our first speaker for today, Dr. Rakesh Kumar, to present his views. However, before that, let me formally introduce our speaker. Dr. Rakesh Kumar is presently working as Associate Professor in History and Vice Principal, Ramlal Anand College. Dr. Rakesh Kumar specializes in medieval Indian history, having earned his doctorate from the University of Delhi. His area of research interest is medieval Indian urban studies. He has written several student-oriented books, including a textbook for undergraduate students, Ancient and Medieval World from Origin of Humans to the Creation. He has presented papers on medieval Indian cities. He is actively involved in curriculum revision in Delhi University. He has been conferred with Teaching Excellence Award by DU in 2014. He is a member of the project investigator team of NMHS funded Patia Village Cluster project for sustainable economic upliftment of villagers under Ministry of EF&CC. Government of India. He will be speaking on self-sufficient villages through organic and sustainable agricultural practices. Over to you, sir.
Good morning to all of you. And I feel privileged for having me invited for this wonderful webinar, which is very, very timely at this hour of crisis which the Himalayan region is facing. And in search, I believe, is doing a wonderful job in this regard. And I'm grateful to Sangeeta ji and other organizers. Neeraj contacted me for this, and I told him that I'm not an expert in Himalayan studies, just that I've had some practical experience in this area in the last 2.5 years. And therefore, I thought that I'll be able to say something for a general, just to add to the studies, Himalayan studies, and the problems that we encounter there, practical problems. Theoretically, we can speak whatever we want to, but basically, once we reach there to bring about any kind of intervention, then the real problem starts. So I'll be speaking today primarily on the issue of migration, which is a little ambitious, or rather arresting migration, which is a little ambitious kind of agenda, because migration cannot be stopped. But yet we can bring about some change in the lifestyle of the people of that region. And we have 4 or 5 colleagues of our college. We applied for a project in that region, in Almora region of Uttarakhand. And after getting the project, we started our work. And then we started noticing the pattern of migration in that particular area, particularly from the villages. And we did a kind of a survey, and based on that, we chalked out a plan of development and how to improve the socio-economic condition of the people of that region. Whosoever is left there, there should be the lifestyle should improve in that area. And so I'll be speaking primarily on the ways in which we can bring about some change in their lives. And definitely the ambitious idea of arresting migration can achieve something in the long run if we are able to actually implement the ideas that we have. So I'll start my presentation now, and I'll be very, very modest. It will be less nuanced and more of a practical aspect. What are the areas that we have visited? What are the problems that we have encountered? And what are the major issues and concerns? And what are the sustainable measures that we can follow to improve the condition of the people of this region? So I'll start sharing, and let's see if can you all see this?
Yeah, we can.
Yes.
Yeah.
So as I said, migration has been a major issue. In fact, what we have seen, migration, of course, is an integral part of the human progress, and people have been migrating from one area to another in order to have better life chances. And in the earlier period, since I have taught ancient history, and in fact prehistory period, I have been engaged in teaching the students. I've also written a book on that, and which basically talks about how humans have progressed from the time of their origin. And one of the important aspects of migration was the carrying capacity of that particular area. So if we notice that generally what we have seen is that people have been migrating from one particular area to another, depending upon the economic resources. And this has been the feature in the entire ancient period. But in the modern sense, what we notice is that the process of migration has changed. New dimensions have come up for migration. It is primarily health or education, uh, or job opportunities. So all these have been added up in the modern concept of migration. People continuously migrate. In fact, if we had not migrated from one area to another area, we wouldn't have achieved what we have today. So migration is something which is very natural in the human lives, and which of course has several dimensions. And in the present context, the globalization and the improved communications, all these have added to the process of migration. But in the recent few decades, the migration from hills have become a major issue of concern for all the activists as well as the policymakers. And people have been talking about the conditions in the hills. Ideally, hills has one of the best environmental conditions, and people should be staying there for uh, a longer kind of life for them. But this is not happening today. People are moving from one area to another area, and that is what has bothered the policymakers and the social activists. So what we need to do at this point of time is to see, first study, we did a kind of survey based on questionnaire. And in fact, we had applied for the project for 8 villages, and we conducted a kind of a questionnaire survey in these villages, about 350 odd households And we tried to find out the various dimensions, various aspects of migration from this area. So what is important here is to understand what are the issues that we see in case of migration. What has happened in the recent past is that there are several villages in Uttarakhand, particularly, where there is hardly any population, and therefore these have been declared as so-called ghost villages, where there is hardly any population. And this has, of course, changed the demography of the region. I mean, it generally happens with migration, that it impacts the demography of both the regions uh, from where the migrants have shifted, and also in the region where the migrants have finally settled down. But in case of hills, what we notice is that there has been a drastic decline in the population of this area. And therefore, this has been a major concern for all of us. Now, these are few of the findings of the migration that have taken place, and based on what we have done, the basic data that we have collected from there. The census report of 2011 says that there was 0.70% growth in the mountainous part of Uttarakhand against the overall state average of 2.82%. And unfortunately, Almora district, where we are engaged in the project, and the Pauri district, they have a negative growth of minus 0.14%. And we were also very surprised when we took up the project. There are 8 villages in the so-called Patia village cluster project, and the combined population of the 8 villages was just about 3,927. So obviously, this very clearly suggests that the mountainous regions have the growth rate is not only low, but also it is negative in certain parts. So when we did a household survey, which was also validated with the Uttarakhand Migration Commission report of 2018, we found that about 75% of the male against 24.8% of the females, they left their villages and went out of their villages to the cities in search of jobs and employment. And the burden fell on the females to look after the children and the old in-laws that they had, and also they had to deal with the agriculture part. So overall, the male population shifting meant that there is a decline in agricultural activities, where the females have to do a multiple role. They have to become a multitasker, and naturally in the process, the agricultural activities suffer in that particular region. So this was one aspect that we noticed. Then we also saw that the migration is more interstate, largely people going to Delhi NCR for jobs, and less within the state. That is just about 31%. So this also very clearly suggests that there was a lack of sufficient employment opportunities in the state, in Uttarakhand, despite the efforts of the government. People they chose to move out of the state. Then coming to the age group of the migrants, and here again there is a very alarming signs that majority of the migrants are from the age group to 15 to 30 years, which is the most productive age group. And this is also affected the entire economic activities of that region. So this is the age group which is very, very active, and they are the ones who are able to bring about change in their economy or in their society. So their shifting out means it's a major crisis for the people of Uttarakhand, particularly in the mountainous regions. Then we also noticed that majority of the migrants, they had about, on an average, about 4 nali of land, which is 0.05 acres. and not too many migrated who had less land holdings. So if people with average land holding of 0.05 acres, they shifted out, then their land was left fallow or it was leased out. And when it was leased out, the people who are cultivating on the land are simply doing it a subsistence cultivation, or the land is left fallow. So which has a direct bearing on the agricultural activity of the region. So migration is directly affecting the agriculture of the Uttarakhand region, particularly in this area in Almora district. Now, as far as occupation is concerned, we noticed that majority of the migrants were looking for jobs in their respective places, even if it is a job which is not highly paid, because getting a good job also depends upon the skills that they have. And since they did not have very high skills, so most of them from the hills, they land up here in Delhi NCR or other things in the restaurant, in any kind of any vertical that they are working in. And obviously they are not having a very good life. They have to stay in very congested localities under the highly what do you call polluted city like Delhi. And this again is a pointer towards the scarcity of employment opportunities in the hills. So what we see is that the push factors which are there, apart from the, I'll not be talking about the pull factors, but concentrate mainly on the push factors, which has led to people migrating from these regions. So decline in agriculture, of course, is the most dominant part, which is compounded by the climate change. Rainfall is affected. And there's also one of the important aspects that we are also dealing with is the human-wildlife conflict, where they are not able to cultivate the land because the crops are being destroyed by the wild animals. Then lack of employment opportunities and additional sources of income. So these are few of the major push factors that have led to people from this area migrating either interstate or intrastate. Majority of them, of course, have moved from the state to bigger state like Delhi in search of employment. Now, what is the present status that we noticed when we started our work in that area? That in the field of agriculture, there was a decline. As we also mentioned, migration, of course, is one of the factors. But those people who are staying back in the villages, then also we find that people are not able to augment the agricultural activities. So the reasons are very clear. The stagnant agricultural technology they are using, because they are subsistence-based agriculture that they are doing. Their plowing process is also not scientific. They are also simply throwing away seeds without proper lining arrangements. So all these technologies, which are backward technologies, have not been very, very productive for agricultural operations. Then out-migration has led to fallow land. In fact, when we went to these areas, we have selected two lands which was left fallow for almost 20-25 years. And with our efforts, we have been able to again start cropping pattern in this particular area. So this has been another reason for decline in agriculture. Then of course, HWC, which is the human-wildlife conflict, destruction of crops by monkeys and wild boars. So we also tried to first find out whether actually the monkeys and wild boars are destroying the crops or not, or whether the villagers are just making a story about it. So we put Dahua cameras, which have a zoom facility in these areas to catch the actions when the monkeys and wild boars, they attack the areas. So we did find evidence of monkeys attacking the crops as well as the wild boars. Now, wild boars, one of the primary aspects, one of the additional reasons why, I mean, they have a different timing. So it's a very difficult for the villagers to manage this, because monkeys, they attack the crops till about 6 p.m. in the evening, and the wild boars attack in the night. So villagers, obviously, they do not have so much of patience to look after both. Monkeys, they enter and destroy crops. Wild boars, particularly, they enter there. They're also looking for an insect which is called kulmula in that local terminology, which is a larva of the beetle family. And they enter the crops, and the larva basically stations itself just 5 to 6 inches below the crop. They also eat up the crop, and the wild boars enter to these fields to eat the larva. So wild boars, even if they are not interested in the crops, in order to eat these insects, they destroy the crops. So this is a very peculiar kind of problem that they are facing. The villagers are facing there. And then, of course, climate change has its own impact. There has been a change in the rainfall pattern. Uh, it has been very, very irregular. In fact, recently we went to the site and realized that there had been no rain in the last 3 4 months in this particular area, and the agriculture is entirely dependent on the rainfall. So this has been one of the problems. Then the traditional reservoirs, which they call naula, has also dried up because of the climate change. So these are few of the major concerns as far as agriculture is concerned. How we see a decline in agriculture, what are the reasons behind the decline in agriculture. So overall, what we notice presently is that the livelihood of the people staying there is dependent on subsistence agriculture, uh, which is very, very minimal. And whatever they produce, they consume it themselves. There is no marketing because there is not enough production. And there's not enough production because the agricultural practices are very, very ancient, and they do not have a scientific method of agriculture. So subsistence agriculture is there. The BPL doles have also made the villagers a little complacent. Since they're getting some money from the government, they do not want to work. So this is one area which which is the practical problem that we faced when we reached in the locality to work for these villagers. And then Rega is another source of income for these people, which also is corruption ridden. We know that. Obviously, I don't know whether I should be saying this in front of this social media or not, but everyone knows what is happening in Rega. So they have, these are the sources of livelihood. There's no additional source of income generation, and the standard of living of the people remains the same. So this is the problem that we could find out in that particular area. But yet there is a silver lining, and that is what we are going to talk about it now. These are the measures that we can think about, and this is very, very doable. But we need a lot of effort in bringing about any kind of change here. First step that we can take here is to bring about changes in the field of agricultural operations by increasing the cropping pattern, by increasing the area or extending the area under cultivation. But for this, what is important is the community approach, which is extremely important. And more than that is cooperative farming. This is one area which can help the villagers, but this is also a problem area because there is no concept of cooperative farming in that particular region. And when we went there, we asked them that, well, we will provide the fencing to protect your crops from the wild animals, and you do a cooperative farming. They all started talking in terms of, this is my land and I'm going to sow this particular crop. The B says that this is my land, I'll sow this kind of crop. So this, of course, was a little disconcerting for us. And therefore, we are still trying very hard to bring about the entire concept of one fence and one crop, so that if everything is produced together, it will have a major impact on the income. Then, of course, we need to have a scientific method of cultivation. So in terms of plowing, their plowing system is very, very ancient, very backward, and because of which there are no deep furrows. So what we did was we provided them with the power tillers. And in fact, we also met the district administration to provide such things. And the CDO, the development officer, he told us that, of course, we can help you. There's a 80-20 scheme for power tillers. I said, fine, go ahead. We are very happy. You give 80% subsidy and we give 20% from our project money. So, but then when we start talking about getting it, he said there is a long queue in this. And obviously we didn't have so much of time. So we bought the power tiller and gave it to the peasants of the villages. And even without fencing, the power tilling made a huge difference, and they had a very good production in a land which was left fallow for almost 15 years. They produced a lentil called arhar, and the production was quite good. So plowing needs to be scientific. We need to have a soil analysis also to see what kind of crops are suitable for the region. We did that also in this as a part of the project. We also need to have better quality of seeds, because the villagers, they do get seeds from the government which are highly subsidized, but the quality of seeds are compromised. So there is a requirement of better quality seeds. uh, Better method of sowing is required, because the way they were doing this activity was not providing good results. So we gave them line makers, and they then started using line makers, and it had a different impact, and the production was much better than what it used to be earlier. And then there is an urgent need to shift towards commercial crops, such as beans and other crops, French beans and other crops, which can give them immediate cash, because the crops that they are producing for subsistence, those are easily available in the market, and they do not need to have those things in their land. And therefore, commercial crops are the order of the day to enhance their income level. And then, of course, when there is a crisis of water in that locality because of the climate change, we need to have water saving irrigation devices. It could be drip irrigation, or it could be sprinkler devices, whatever that is required in that particular area, so that we irrigate the land also. At the same time, we do not have a shortage of water. Then how do we protect the crops from the wild animals? So of course, one option is the fencing, or solar fencing, or traditional kind of fencing. Traditional fencing is not very costly, but solar fencing is very costly, and it requires a huge amount of money. In fact, we selected about 10 acres of land in the four villages, and it's going to cost about 17 to 18 lakhs of rupees. So this is a costly proposition. But what is important is that if the fencing is able to give you good crops, then of course, in 2-3 crops only, the entire cost of fencing can be recovered. So we are just providing a model to the government, and if we are successful, then government can think in terms of providing subsidy for solar fencing. But solar fencing is not enough, because the monkeys are very smart. So what they do is that they simply, many a times, a younger one will come, he will touch the wires and see where is the neutral wire and where is the wire where there is a current. And between these two, they jump inside the field. So we have to have other devices also. So bioacoustic devices could be one of them, where these are sensor based devices, and they take out variety of sounds of wild animals, so to deter these monkeys and wild boars to enter the field. Then, of course, we are also trying traditional crops like haldi and adrak, because these are two crops which are not liked by the monkeys. And if it is done at the fence level of the entire area, then there is a possibility to stop the monkeys from entering that area or even try to enter the area. So these are few methods that can be used for crop protection. Then for water management, which is very, very essential, we have to revive the traditional reservoirs or the nalas. In fact, when we recently visited that area, we found that most of these nalas had dried up. So we need to revive them. And by how we can revive them is by constructing water harvesting structures next to the nalas. So we are also attempting that. By creating water harvesting structures, we can ensure the availability of water in these traditional reservoirs. And we also need to apply drip irrigation and water sprinklers, as I mentioned earlier, to manage the water better and provide water to the fields. Then in the field of agriculture itself, there are additional sources of income generation. They can be mushroom cultivation. Very recently, we trained the people of this these villages. Those who tried individually, their crop was not very good, but those who did it in a cooperative fashion, their product was very encouraging, and they were also able to market these mushrooms in the nearby hotels and restaurants. So this is another area where their income can be enhanced apart from the usual crops. They can also use grow red and yellow bell pepper once the fencing is provided. Beekeeping and floriculture is another option for them, which does not cost much. Fisheries, government is also providing some help to the villagers to develop fisheries. Traditional herbs is one of the options, but yes, of course, this will depend upon the height, the altitude of the area, because the traditional herbs generally they grow very well in higher altitudes, but in the lower altitudes it may be a problem. But keeping in mind the altitude of the region, the traditional herbs can also be grown, which are in great demand in various parts of India. And but cooperative marketing is another very important aspect which can help them to market their products, where the government can also pitch in and bring about make the process of marketing easier for the villagers. The construction of poly houses can be of great help, where you need to have um, temperature controls conditions for things like mushroom, both button mushroom and oyster mushrooms. So poly houses can do wonders. It can also do wonders for the red and yellow bell pepper. So if these are given to the villagers, we are also trying to give it, and we have also a provision for this. And let us see how successful we are in our endeavor. Then another thing which is extremely important for the additional source of income for the villagers is the area of tourism. Now we all know that the hills survive on tourism, but what has happened is that tourism has been unplanned and unorganized, and a few of the recent natural disasters have very clearly exposed the flip side of unorganized tourism. And moreover, this kind of tourism has only helped the urban areas in the mountainous regions. So the rural areas or people from the rural areas, they have been denied this opportunity of benefiting from the tourism. So what we propose and what we intend to do is to develop geotourism and village tourism, which gives a direct benefit to the rural population. Now, this is something. Geotourism is something which is which it's a new concept. It comes under the niche tourism, and not many people go for this kind of tourism. there are limited number of tourists who are really interested in looking at the geoformations in the Himalayas, because of late there has been a lot of interest in the study of the Himalayas. And therefore, this is a wonderful area for the geologists and experts in this area to visit and study the various formations in the Himalayas. So this is one area, and which is good for the specialists, but it is also very good for the students who are graduate students, undergraduate students, or postgraduate students, or doing PhD in the field of geology. So they can study the rocks, and they can also benefit from this particular this area, which is rich in such kind of rocks. Now, what is interesting here is that in several areas, new roads have been laid. And in the process of laying the roads, few rocks have been exposed. Now, these rock exposures are extremely valuable for the study of the rocks. And therefore, these areas can be protected and can be used for geo excursion of the students, as also for the experts in the field of geology. And this has several benefits which can create additional income for the villagers, particularly. Accommodation and food is one area where the homestays can play a very important role. So what we are doing in our project is that we have identified certain areas where there have been rock exposures, and it's a stretch of about 5 to 7 kilometers, and where there are 4 and 5 very good sites of rock exposures. And we are looking for uh, building the homestays or constructing the homestays uh, in these areas, so that when the geologists come or when the students come, they stay in these homestays in the villages, uh, which are basically low cost accommodation. And what we intend to do is to renovate very old houses, old Kumaoni houses, with very minor alterations, so that all those who come to this place, they stay in a very traditional houses, heritage houses, but they have modern facilities, modern bathrooms, modern um, kind of hospitality that generally they get in the hotels. So in the villages, we're trying to do that. So by doing this, we maintain the heritage value of the houses without making any major changes in the houses. And then so what happens is that in the process, the house owners, the homestay owners, they benefit from this. Those who cook, they get some employment here, and all other service providers, also transporters and others, they get benefit from this entire exercise. So their income also is generated. Then there are several activities that can be organized: camping or trekking or stargazing. We can have an arrangement, because hills are the areas which are the best areas for looking at the stars. So and village setting is the best place for stargazing. So these can be organized. So this will enhance the income for the local guides and the entrepreneurs. And so when we look at the possibility, we find that there is a very strong possibility of tourists coming to, particularly these people, the interested in geotourism. So they have attraction. Everyone wants to see heritage houses these days. Many people, many tourists, they want to stay in the villages, and they want to see the real village life. So they get to stay in heritage houses. They also are very close, in close proximity to the geosites where they can visit. They get the local and organic food, because the food is grown within the villages. The vegetables, most of the houses in the villages have a small area where they grow vegetables. So they get local and organic food. They have a great opportunity to study rocks, its lithology, the stratigraphy, the thrust areas. I mean, this entire the Kumaon region is full of such areas where they can see the land formations. And also possibly they might even look for earliest life forms, because we picked up some rocks from this area, and the geologists in one of the members in our team did a thin section study of the rocks, and they found the fossils of plant life. So there is a very strong possibility that the rocks here may contain the earliest life forms. And once this is exposed, the entire world would be interested in visiting this locality to see such kind of new findings. So there is a very strong possibility of development in this area. Then connected with the geotourism is the village tourism. The people would be staying in villages, they have accommodation in villages, so they'll enjoy local food and culture. So a amphitheater kind of thing can be made in one of the villages, where 3-4 villages together, the cultural activities. There are several festivals. In fact, entire Uttarakhand is full of festivals. Every now and then they have some festival or the other. So this is also a very wonderful chance for them to showcase their culture. And also they can sell their organic food items and local crafts works, because the people who come for a geo excursion, they would be staying in villages. They'll also have an experience of village life. So they'll interact with the local villages. There will be exchange of ideas. And of course, one of the threats that we have, which is generally one of the apprehensions that is generally expressed, is that if the outsiders enter the villages, there would be a clash of cultures. But this can definitely be avoided by a better interaction between the two, so that the tourists, they respect the local culture. They can also go for a trekking to nearby ancient temples. The entire Uttarakhand region, and particularly the area of our research, is full of such ancient temples, which dates back to about 12th, 13th century. So there was a Katiwala dynasty. They have made several temples in that area. Then there is Jageshwar, Bageshwar, Kasar Devi temple, Golu Gadar Devta temple. There are several temples which are at a trekking distance from this area. So the village guides can take these people to these temples by trekking, and these village guides can also earn some money. So basically, both geotourism and village tourism are a kind of tourism that are environment friendly, eco-friendly, and therefore they do not tend to damage the environment as the other tourist activities are going to do. So what are the benefits that we get? There is a protection of geo-heritage and cultural heritage, because we are proposing sustainable tourism. The additional source of income is generated, employment is generated for the rural population. And in the long run, if the village life improves, if the condition of, if livelihood improves, if the standard of living improves, then of course there is a possibility in the long run that those who have migrated outside and staying in a very poor condition, earning little amount of money, may like to come back to the villages where there is a possibility and they have a very good and healthy air to live in. So these are a few of the observations that we had while doing the project. And at the same time, then what we can hope for is what is to be done for this to become real. The projects, first and foremost, the projects which are granted should have well-defined targets. So what are the targets and how they're going to achieve it? There should be legal protection to rocks and geoheritage, because for the monuments, the ASI has provisions, the Archaeological Survey of India has provisions, and these are protected monuments, but there is no legal protection to the rocks. So what is happening is that rocks, once the rocks are exposed, the villagers, even the government, and there is a mafia which simply takes away the rocks from here. And if there is no rock, there is no geotourism. And most important thing is that this is high time that we placed emphasis on protection of geodiversity, because geodiversity is a silent partner of biodiversity. So we have landforms, we have mountains, we have rivers, we have lakes. So once we protect these, we have rocks. So once we protect these, it has a direct bearing on the biodiversity. So this needs to be emphasized. And of late in the international community, there is an emphasis on the protection of geodiversity. I believe there's going to be a seminar, international webinar very soon. I think on 14th or 16th of April, this seminar is going to happen on geodiversity. Then we also need to bring about awareness among the local people for preservation of geo and cultural heritage and crafts. So people of the villages must realize that how important are the rocks for them, how important is the crafts for them, so that once they start getting benefit out of it, they themselves go on protecting, they themselves start protecting these heritage areas. Then they should also be made aware about the benefits of cooperative farming and marketing, because cooperative farming and marketing has succeeded in several areas. Here we need to bring about some change. And lastly but not least, state needs to provide support to the villages in terms of subsidy for fencing, for irrigation, for seeds, for packaging, marketing, homestays. They should also provide some kind of a funding for homestays. Of course, there is a scheme which is called Deen Dayal Upadhyay Homestay Scheme. But then there are bureaucratic red tapeism which prevents the villagers to go there and start. And once, of course, they simply cannot create a homestay in the villages because homestays are mostly situated near natural scenes or near some kind of major tourist centers, tourist attractions. So if villagers have to develop homestays, they need to ensure that tourists would be coming to stay in the villages. So that is also very, very important. So simply the state support is not going to help. The government also needs to provide poly houses and also periodic agricultural training. So these are few of the aspects that needs to be done to bring about any kind of change. But believe me, it is very, very difficult to deal with the villages. Even if you have money, even if you have been given money by any organization, it's difficult to enter even the villages. We were fortunate that one of the team members belonged to the Patia village, and so it was easy for us to get an entry. But most important is to win the trust of the villagers. They do not trust you because they have seen many NGOs going there, dumping few buckets or some plastic things and then simply going away. So they don't trust you. So it took us almost 4, 5, 6 months to win the trust of the villagers. And unless you show the results, they do not believe you. So what is important is that we need to go there and work consistently with a lot of patience with the villagers. So in the end, I would say that such a webinar is an eye-opener to all of us. And these are very timely seminars for people to realize it's high time we looked after the Himalayas, looked after the people of the Himalayas, and maintain the serenity of the Himalayas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. It is extremely, sorry, I think, okay, no issue. I'll share the screen later. It is extremely heartwarming and inspirational to see academicians like you taking up issues on the ground. And we have seen several motivated and committed professionals like you engaged in extremely relevant projects. Your project addresses the problem of migration and how we can arrest it, and also improve the socioeconomic conditions, of the people who still dwell in the hills. Of course, migration is a historical, socioeconomic, eternal phenomena. However, in the modern period, it has been fueled by health, education, job opportunities, and globalization. But like we saw earlier, that there is certainly a difference, between pravas and palayan. And here you can see that it is an out migration, which is predominantly male led. It is an interstate migration, which is due to the lack of livelihoods and the lack of, amenable conditions in this particular area. Of course, you have drawn attention, to the decline of agriculture and how this area needs, in fact, not only a high yield revolution, but at the same time, other types of agricultures, which can be economically important for these people. Though we have seen again and again in this conference, a voice being raised, in fact, for sustainable tourism. But your emphasis, in fact, on geodiversity and geotourism is a very, very valuable addition, in fact, to the voices in this conference. So we do really hope, that the model being perfected by you is supported by the government. And we at InSearch are definitely, we express a desire, to partner in these very timely and in these very responsible projects, which are taking shape. Thank you so much. I would request, I'm very sure that there are many questions. I would request everyone to please submit their questions in the chat box. We are going to take them up after the talk by Dr. Sharma is over. So now it is once again time to introduce our speaker, the second speaker. This is Dr. Kaustubh Sharma. Dr. Kaustubh Sharma has been involved in active research and conservation since 2001. He has been working with the Snow Leopard Trust, Seattle, USA since 2007, and currently serves as the Assistant Director of Conservation Policy and Partnerships. Since 2014, he also serves as the International Coordinator of the Global Snow Leopard and Ecosystems Protection Program, GSLEP, whose secretariat is based in Bishkek. At the GSLEP program, Kaustubh leads a small team with support from international organizations to coordinate this unique alliance that brings together governments of the 12 snow leopard range countries, non-government organizations, and conservationists. As senior regional ecologist at the Snow Leopard Trust, he assists in field research, data analysis, and conservation and training programs across several countries. Kaustubh obtained a PhD in wildlife zoology from the University of Mumbai in 2006 after pursuing his master's in physics in 2001. He conducted the first detailed study of the rare four-horned antelope while working with Bombay Natural History Society in central India for his PhD. Kaustubh's academic interests lie in population ecology, conservation biology, policy, data visualization, and technology for conservation. He has so far authored about 35 scientific publications and has presented his work in nearly the same number of international conferences. We've been very fortunate to have him heard earlier in the conference we had on wildlife. And we remember fondly all the very vivacious interaction that followed later. Today, he speaks to us on snow leopard, the ecological, cultural, and political ambassador of Asia's high mountains. We are all ears. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sangeeta ji. That was a fairly elaborate description. I hope I live up to what you have set me up for the audience. Just give me a second while I check the settings. Okay. I believe you all can see my screen. No, doesn't look like it. Give me a second. Now I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay, wonderful. Just give me a second. All right. Okay. So yes, good morning, everyone. And I'd like to first thank Dr. Kumar for a very, very interesting project that he is up for. There are a lot of overlaps which we see in what you're doing and in another landscape versus what we are trying to do with the snow leopard landscapes. But to be honest, I'd really like to thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to speak at this valedictory session of the National Conference on Natural and Cultural Ecosystems. And as some of you might know, I'm joining you from Bishkek, which is the capital of Kyrgyzstan. Now, about a few years ago, I was having an informal chat with a banker friend of ours, and he complained that, and this is what he said, that we as bankers know that we are selling lies. We know the person who we are selling the lies to knows that he's being sold lies, but the person still buys the product. We are still able to sell the products. You, on the other hand, are trying to do something which doesn't really have to do much with, filling your. Actually, it has nothing to do with filling your own pockets. You're working for a species. You're working for local communities that live along with the species in remote areas. But very few people know you. Fewer people buy your ideas. Both of us are probably doing something right and definitely something wrong. The takeaway message from this informal chat was that we need to learn how to communicate better. And by learning how to communicate better, we need to understand how you reach out to a larger audience, an audience which represents the people of the world, the citizens of the world who can vote, whereas other elements of biodiversity, which are all living beings or even non-living things, they can't vote for their own survival. They can't vote for their own conservation. And although I'm not the best person to be talking to you about how to communicate ideas and concepts, primarily because I'm not a banker, I can definitely give you try to give you a bit of a perspective about what this species that you see on the screen is capable of and how its charisma cuts across political, cultural, religious, and ecological borders. Now, the high mountains of Asia are referred to as the third pole. These are home to 14 of the world's highest peaks and nearly 100,000 square kilometers of glaciers. Now, these glaciers, as you can imagine, store most of the drinking water that we use. And these encompass mountains of the Himalayas, the Hindu Kush, the Pamirs, Tian Shan, Altai, and also the massive, mighty Tibetan Plateau. The region also provides essential ecosystem services, including provisioning of water for a third of the world's human population. Now, that's not a small number we're talking about. It also helps sustain pastoral and agricultural livelihoods of local communities that depend on biodiversity for food, fuel, fodder, and various other ecosystem services. These mountains also offer sources of inspiration recreation and economic opportunities, as well as local, regional, and global ecosystem services. And in no universe can we underplay the value of these ecosystems. We also know that these mountains are home to an ecosystem that feed many of Asia's great lakes and rivers that have given rise to ancient civilizations. Uh, we all know the Central Asian region. We all know the region around Mongolia. We all know China. We all know the entire Gangetic delta, which was the crucible of humanity. And even if you look at 1,000 or several thousand-year-old estimates of populations or projections of human population, these areas have flourished because of water and resources, ecosystem services that these mountains provided them with. Now, despite their importance, the high mountains of Asia have tended to be viewed as marginal because they support sparse but widespread or ubiquitous human populations. And therefore, they elude the collective consciousness of citizens and governments. If you look at the area that I'm talking about, it's also one of the most vulnerable regions to climate change. It's expected to warm at twice the rate of the average warming in the entire northern hemisphere. So you can imagine how sensitive, how graphic the changes would be in this particular landscape, how informative and how valuable it will be to monitor these changes. We all know climate change is amplifying the risks that are faced by local communities. It is also amplifying the risks being faced by biodiversity due to an increased frequency and intensity of extreme climatic events, natural disasters, compromised livelihoods, and overall increasing an exposure to pathogens and emerging infectious diseases that we are very likely to have absolutely no protection against whatsoever. I'll come back to the point shortly. We all know illegal wildlife trade is destroying the delicate network of species that have specialized to live in these extreme climatic conditions and across vast landscapes. And not just that, this is the point I just mentioned briefly earlier. Climate change and illegal wildlife trade are exposing a region that has historically been socially distanced. And by socially distanced, I mean, if you look carefully, the region, the North Pole, which is somewhere this entire region, it's been socially distanced from the multitude of disease outbreaks across the world. It has been out of bounds largely to pathogens and diseases and that it's likely going to be most unprepared if something new happens soon. Now imagine when we're talking about the glaciers and permafrost layers that are melting and projected to melt at twice the rate than the rest of the world, rest of the northern hemisphere, what we are looking at is these frozen storehouses will bring or will unlock viruses, bacteria, and other pathogens that have been frozen for millennia. And it's quite likely that none of us living beings, whether it's humans or wildlife or plants or whatever, they're not likely to have any sort of an immunity or preparedness against them when it happens. But it's likely to happen there sooner than later because these are the areas which are melting faster, and these are the areas that have been frozen for the last several hundreds of thousands of years. The large-scale linear infrastructure development, or cutting across mountains to build broader roads where a narrower road can also do, or to build roads where you don't really need roads. by destroying mountains and throwing the debris into the river basins, or mining and damming areas that are completely unsustainable. Or in other words, if I may say, none of this is unimportant. We all use products that are mined. We all drive on roads that are built. We all use linear infrastructure. We all use water and electricity, which is dammed. All that one needs to be careful about is to have them properly planned. So the point I'm trying to convey here is that these large scale infrastructural development, which is poorly planned, are representing an ever-growing human footprint in the already ecologically sensitive mountains of Asia. And as sad as it may sound, our interference and carelessness is leading to irreversible damage to the local ecosystems and even local livelihoods. Now, it sounds surprising, but today free-ranging dogs have become the biggest enemy of not just wildlife, but also local herders in many places, as they're killing more livestock than snow leopards and wolves put together. These dogs are also becoming a source of disease, and their proliferation in such remote landscapes is, if not partly, then I might actually say entirely due to us throwing our garbage or creating scenarios where these feral, or I might as well say wild, feral dogs ranging wildly in these areas are causing tremendous damage to the ecosystems and also to the local communities and local economies. Now, if you look at the range of the issues I just listed, you'll notice that none of these can be dealt with by just one segment of the society. What this region needs, what conservation of this region needs, is an ambassador, a champion, a flag bearer that communicates the message for its conservation, that indicates its status, and that binds people together. What we need is an ambassador that can bring together governments to take joint action, while at the same time forgetting the differences that they may have between them. We need an ambassador that brings heads of multilateral agencies, or in fact, all multilateral agencies, such as the United Nations, on board to talk about conservation of an otherwise forgotten or less concerned area. We need an ambassador that appeals to the international treaties and conventions, whether it is the Climate Pact in Paris or the Aichi biodiversity targets, or the more holistic sustainable development goals identified by the United Nations. What we need is an ambassador that helps us connect to the public through celebrities and other influencers who have a reach that others can never possibly have, who have a reach to a large number of citizens of the world who we otherwise may never be able to reach out to. And most importantly, we need an ambassador that allows local communities to be a part of the solution. We cannot vouch for a model where conserving biodiversity alienates the local communities from the entire effort. And of course, lastly, we also need an ambassador that captures the interest of people across the world, that stimulates their interest, that brings them together, that calls for their attention. And one such ambassador, I'm not going to say it's the only ambassador, but one such ambassador is the snow leopard. Now, as the apex predator representing the biodiversity of nearly 2 million square kilometers where the snow leopard is distributed, the species represents natural ecosystems of the world's third pole and is also considered to be an indicator, or let's say the thermometer of the health of the mountains. In other words, if you know the story of the canary in the mines, where miners used to take a canary with them in a cage when they would get in to the mines, some of the deep mines, the canary would keep singing, and the moment the canary would stop singing, typically when it would die, the miners would realize that the oxygen level is dropping and they have to rush out. So the canary used to be an indicator that the oxygen level is dipping, and it saved the lives of the miners, sadly, at the cost of its own life. But similarly, snow leopards are an indicator. They are the canary of the entire mountain ecosystem, whose value we just discussed earlier, who provide water to a third of humanity, who have unimaginable number or an unimaginable volume of carbon stored, who are protecting us from an exposure to an unimaginable number of pathogens, which we will not be prepared for if and when that comes down. And we know for sure that no folklore in the region, irrespective of the religion, whether it's Islam, whether it's Buddhism, whether it's Hinduism or Christianity, or another shamanism or other sects, no folklore in the region is complete without a mention of the revered snow leopard. And that's what makes it a symbol of the cultural heritage of Asia's mountains. It also brings together governments from these countries that may otherwise have differences. And these countries come together on the same platform to support each other. I'm reminded of a very interesting meeting a few years ago in Bishkek in 2017, where the representative from the government of India tabled a proposal that was immediately seconded by the representatives from Pakistan and were supported by the representatives of China and Russia. Now, such camaraderie, such a cohesion of ideas, such coming together does not happen everywhere. And that, I think, we can credit the snow leopard for. Now, for a species that lives across 12 countries, mostly within a few hundred kilometers of international borders, it often moves between countries, right? Like, for example, we know a snow leopard in Pakistan would go to Afghanistan periodically. We know a snow leopard in Tajikistan would cross the border, get to Afghanistan, and walk into Pakistan. We know a snow leopard from Nepal would cross over to China and India and Bhutan. And we also know of snow leopards that travel between Russia and Mongolia. None of these snow leopards need any visas or passports. They move between these borders as long as, of course, we let them and we don't fence those borders. These animals move between borders, and they represent what we can call as the as a species which plays a true diplomatic role. And imagine a species with such characteristics that binds these 12 countries together, that is representing a layer which ignores human-made borders. I think it's that a species such as the snow leopard seems to have the ability to play the role of a diplomatic ambassador of the mountains that it represents, not the countries, but the entire mountain range that it represents. And why are these mountain ranges important? I'll just repeat myself. These are the mountain ranges which are providing us with a huge amount of ecosystem services. They are playing an important role for our well-being as well. Now, quickly changing gears, if I ask you, what images does the term artificial intelligence bring to your mind? Many of you will probably mention Terminator 2, robots taking over the world, Big Brother watching you, or privacy breach, and so on. Now, imagine how can snow leopards be related to AI? And I'm just going to show you a short advertisement that was released. In fact, it was an ad campaign by Microsoft in 2019. If you happen to be in Europe or US, you would have been subjected to it. but you can always go online and search for it to get a better look. I'm just going to show you that little clip, just 30 seconds, but and then I'll come back to what message does it convey.
With AI, we can protect what we can't see.
Snow leopards are almost impossible to find. But we need to know where they are because they are threatened. Our camera traps allow us to have an eye in the mountains, taking thousands of pictures. Microsoft AI scans through all these images and separates snow leopards from everything else. In 10 minutes instead of 10 days, it gives us time to do better research and save this threatened species.
Now, as you see, 30 seconds, a very strong message about what about one, that yes, there is a species such as snow leopard. And imagine this advertisement got seen, got about a billion impressions. 1 billion impressions is what this ad got. But more importantly, what it also did, Microsoft was able to use an interesting subject to share its work on artificial intelligence and to some extent dissuade the fears that you may have with AI. It is a commonplace now. Everyone's using it for various things, you know it or not, whether it is searching for something on Google or whether it is looking for friends on Facebook. AI is everywhere. But the point I'm trying to mention here is that they use the work they did with us to showcase the likable side of AI, making it more commonplace than it ever was. Similarly, whether it's Microsoft or Adidas or ICICI, whether it's using AI or coming together for an endurance event that connects people together for a common cause, the snow leopard is one such ambassador that unlocks the immense potential for us all to be able to make the issue of conservation no longer a matter of choice or happening somewhere where it's out of mind, out of sight, out of mind, but something that is connected to each of us, that we are all connected to. In other words, it's not something that we can any longer look at as a matter of choice, but something that's more of a necessity. Now, I'll end with this very simple and very interesting story that showcases how how snow leopards can become a powerful ambassador of wildlife conservation and how human wildlife coexistence can be achieved. And this is where I'll get I'll sort of overlap a little bit with what Dr. Kumar was talking about. And this story is from Khyber, a small hamlet in the Spiti region. So in the year 1990s, a snow leopard had walked into this village, which you all might know. It's in Himachal Pradesh, a beautiful village, large part of mostly Buddhist communities. They revere all life forms. And a snow leopard had walked into the village, and it ended up in a corral and killed. In a killing frenzy, it killed about 25 to 30 goats in just one night. Now, for a herder, this could mean an entire year's livelihood gone in just one night. Now, whatever your cultural and your religious or your moral beliefs would be, if it comes to your livelihood, if it comes to the livelihood of your or well-being of you and your family, you have to defend it. You need to defend it. Here again, angry with the predator, the local people killed the snow leopard at that point in time. However, because of their traditional and cultural beliefs, where each life form is revered, they buried the snow leopard in a valley near the village. But the animosity or the angst against the snow leopard was so much, so profound, that it became a ritual that for years to come, people would go and beat the grave with a stick. And that's how upset they were with the amount of losses the communities were facing because of the wildlife. Now, cut to 2010, another snow leopard walks into the same village. This time, as luck would have it, or as destiny would have it, the snow leopard died on its own. It was an old snow leopard that had most likely lived its share of the 9 lives that people say cats have. But anyway, the bottom line being the snow leopard had died. But this time, instead of taking away the snow leopard to somewhere else, and what happened earlier, this time the snow leopard was wrapped in a sacred cloth called ashikata and given a respectful funeral. As I mentioned, it was draped with the sacred cloth and cremated with respect and reverence. Now, what changed? What is it that happened in these 20 years that separated the two events, resulting in such a dramatic shift in people's attitudes towards a formidable predator of their livestock? I mean, it's not that snow leopards have completely stopped becoming a threat to livestock. They still are a threat to livestock. There are still occasional attacks by snow leopards on livestock, but something definitely changed that transformed people's attitudes towards the snow leopard. The answer here lies in partnership. Now, in this case, a partner organization of the International Snow Leopard Trust, the Nature Conservation Foundation, they initiated a number of programs in the community that aimed at minimizing losses, and that was done through a community-owned insurance program. We can talk about it another time. They also reduced livestock losses by incentivizing better herding practices, because research shows that if livestock are herded actively, proactively, then there is less chance, almost negligible chance of a snow leopard attacking it when in the mountains. And they also initiated a long-term education program for continued engagement with children, women, men in the entire community about nature conservation. In fact, the insurance program was such a success that in a few years' time, neighboring villages came and said, oh, can we also get it done in our area, because we are having a similar problem. And the program spread across over a dozen communities. Currently, it's also expanded in Mongolia, in Pakistan, and so on. So it's expanding, and it's become a success story. But the key that I started here with is partnership. Now, while partners or partnership is a self-explanatory term, we can also look at it as an acronym. There's a publication that you can find on the Snow Leopard Trust's website or elsewhere. It's free to download, free to order. It's called the Partners Principles for Community-Based Conservation. What it does is it tries to decode the key elements that can help make a conservation program successful, viable, and sustainable. Now, Mr. Kumar's presentation, where he mentioned the challenges of getting access into communities, we are fully with him. But the answer to whatever little we have learned lies in long-term presence. Be present in the society. When you parachute into a society, you are not going to get traction. You're always going to have challenges. And that's exactly what I see Mr. Kumar and his team did. They spent time. They were patient. They spent 6 months spending time with the communities to get their trust. But here, if you look at the various elements of partners, presence is one of them. Aptness. Whatever you do, it has to be apt to that local community's traditions, cultures, and norms. It's very, very important to respect the local communities. They are partners, and partners are not partners are. A partnership is always a partnership when it's an equal partnership. If it's disbalanced, then it's no more a partnership. It's very important to be transparent to what you're doing. And many times you do notice that people say we are going to do this, and they have some ulterior motives or hidden agendas. That really doesn't work. It might work then, but in the long term, it could create severe problems and even a complete abrupt end of the program. Negotiations are part of our day-to-day life, whether it's buying vegetables or talking to our own children or talking to teachers, convincing them about doing or not doing homework. Negotiation is part of us, and it is also part of engaging with communities. Empathy, responsiveness, both of these elements touch upon how it is important to try and put yourself in their shoes before coming in with a solution or a suggestion or an advice. And responsiveness, I'll give you one simple example where, one of our partners in organizations in Pakistan, they were working in a region where they had there was a flash flood, and suddenly everything about snow leopard conservation transformed into doing something for the local community so that they can have their access to drinking water back, because the flash flood had destroyed their access to drinking water. Now that's a kind of responsiveness one is looking at. Yes, it's difficult, and because we all work through grants and donations and other support, it's always a challenging task to go back and explain to them why you have to do these. But that kind of a flexibility is almost essential if you have to try and succeed in working with the local communities. And strategic support is largely keeping in mind that all of this cannot happen without the support, the blessing, and the guidance or engagement, not actually guidance, but engagement of governments or government agencies. They are there. They have the framework. They have the infrastructure. They have the mandate. And trying to work against some of these set systems can at times make it far more difficult to achieve something. So it's always important to work with the government mechanisms or the frameworks that exist there. And that somewhere, if you're able to deal with these different elements, these 8 elements of the partners principles, I think that can really help us engage with the communities and build a stronger network. In fact, the local communities that share their space with large predators such as the snow leopard, they also hold the key to conservation of the entire ecosystem. We cannot conserve these large landscapes without the blessing, support, and ownership of the human populations that they interface with. And whether it's through mitigating conflicts with wildlife, by helping prepare predator-proof corrals or insurance programs or augmenting livelihoods or whatever, or it is by training and education. I think community-based approach is the key to conserving not just the snow leopards, but their entire ecosystems. So such is the impact of snow leopards that it brings together countries, helps initiate a conversation about technology, and makes an opportunity for biodiversity conservation in partnership with the local communities. And the reason why we do call it unabashedly the ecological, cultural, and political ambassador of Asia's high mountains. With that, I'd like to stop here, and please feel free to shoot any questions or comments that you may have. I don't promise to know the answers to all the questions that some of you may have, but I'll try my best to respond to questions if you have any. Thank you. I'll leave the slide here. And yes, feel free to follow us or connect with us on email or social media, or I think you all should have our email as well. So, yep. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kaustubh. Himalayas as the third pole. This has been almost the bottom line, of the conference. And of course, what you highlighted, the ecosystem services, the water, the inspiration, civilization, culture, protection, which the mountains provide. And of course, they support population, in sparse and widespread pockets. So perhaps it is easy to ignore them. These regions, however, are doubly at risk of climate change, as you highlighted, and also to natural and all kinds of man-made disasters, compromised livelihoods, indiscriminate resource exploitation. And in this time of the pandemic era, the pathogenic implications, of the melting of glaciers is really alarming. And the mindless development, the so-called development, is actually literally killing, these regions. So definitely, as kind of very sensitive areas as they are, an ambassador to rally agencies, to this area to catch the attention of the agencies is what is indeed required. We saw the same strategy, in one of the earlier sessions to bring Sakur to places like Pithoragarh, where by promoting the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, there was the attention, in fact, of various agencies that was focused, onto these areas. But the snow leopard, the apex predator that it is of course the beloved and revered and representative barometer, of the mountain ecosystems. So, and of course it is magnificent enough, to elicit the response from governments. It is a transnational denizen, of the Himalayas, and thus binds the 12 countries that it inhabits. So what a glorious idea and what a wonderful presentation. The snow leopard, as the ecological, cultural, and diplomatic ambassador of the high Himalayas. So long live the ambassador and long live, the people who are working with it. I just kind of used the word partner in my earlier summarization as a well-meaning intention, to kind of go beyond the classroom through these conferences, but at the same time under the very objective, in fact, of these conferences, to share on ground, in fact, the findings of this conference and the very important work which various agencies, in fact, are doing in the various areas. Of course, the community is a very important factor, but we also wish, the inserts once again reiterates that we also wish, to be partners, in the sense of this kind of responsible community. So thank you so much, Kaustubh. Now I believe the floor is open, in fact, for the questions, which we have. So if it is okay, so can we first take the questions, for Rakesh sir? Dr. Rakesh, if you're there.
Yes, please.
Yeah, sure. On the WhatsApp group also, Rakesh ji, you must have checked, that there are quite a few questions, for you. But you can see that it is quite possible, to kind of group them into 2 or 3 broad areas, where these questions are concerned. So should I, kind of, group them together, these questions?
Yes, please. Yes, please. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so you can see that one is, of course, on the issue of migration. So is it a brain gain or brain drain? Generally the migration, what is your take, on migration in this area? And the second question is definitely about the government. What is the government doing, as far as the kind of measures that it has put on ground regarding the arrest of this migration? What the government is doing, is it enough or is it not enough? And at the same time, there are also certain questions, about agriculture. It says, what are the core distinguishing features of community supported agriculture from industrialized market based agriculture? So generally speaking, you can see that there is another question on how to promote local organic agriculture. Another question which says, what according to you are the best features and benefits of rooftop farming? So before we can take up these questions on the various types of agriculture, I think the first 2 questions would be about what the government is doing about migration, and secondly, how do you see migration? It is brain gain or brain drain?
Right. So first, I'll take up the issue of brain drain kind of thing. It's very obvious that if the age group of 15 to 30 years, they migrate from this particular area, then of course it is a brain drain. That is the most educative year. And these people, if they stay at home, then any kind of intervention introduced by the government or non-governmental agencies, they'll be able to adopt it quickly. And when you're dealing with people aged 50 and above, they already have certain set ideas in their mind. And it's very difficult to drill through their minds the intervention programs that you come up with. So if you have younger generation staying in the village, it's easier to deal with that. So definitely it is a brain drain uh, as far as I'm concerned. Now, coming to the government initiative as far as migration is concerned. So you'll be surprised that when we were talking to the district magistrate Almora for the first time, maybe he was in a different mood or whatever. He said, why are you doing this? Why do you need to stop migration? And if we all had not migrated, then we wouldn't have developed at all. So if they are happy with whatever they've got, why do you want to interfere in it? So this was the first response from the district administration. But yet, of course, we can give him the benefit of doubt that he may be having a bad day in office. But yes, of course, government is doing different things. Not to stop migration, because stopping migration is not their idea. They have several programs, and no doubt programs and the various schemes are reaching the villagers. But yes, they have to deal with several requests from several areas, and with due respect to the IS community, they have a set agenda. And the bureaucracy in India is still a steel frame. So they would not do anything which is beyond their scope of duty, and they would not like to try something new. So they would be doing their bit, and they would be transferred in a year or two, depending upon the political masters. So they have a very limited kind of mandate to go about. And when we spoke to the district administration, everyone was very happy and very willing to cooperate. There's no doubt about it. But when it comes to actual work, you find them wanting. They are not able to, then they come up with this same old this thing that, well, it'll take time. And that was one thing which was not there with us. We didn't have the time, and we don't have the time. We had to do things on our own. I said, fine, we'll go ahead. Of course, government cooperation is extremely welcome. But government is doing work not specifically to stop migration, but to improve the condition of the people of the villages. But yes, there are other things which also makes the villages complacent. This, of course, is the BPL doles that they get, and they are happy with whatever they have got. So government is coming up with schemes, coming up with measures which are reaching the villages also, but they are taking time. And villagers are also not very enterprising to perpetually go and be after. They are rather not persistent in going after the officers. And if, for example, if there is a shortage of water, then there is a scheme for solar pump from the side of the government. But getting a solar pump, it takes a lot of time. So, and also the usual corruption at the local level in the local electricity departments and local irrigation departments is still there, which is ingrained in our society and which is not going to go. So yes, government is doing some work as far as migration is concerned, not specifically targeted at stopping the migration, but yes, they are doing definitely something to improve the lifestyle of the people. But maybe the persistence is not good enough, or rather it's not reaching the every level of the society. Because when we spoke to the CDO, he was in fact interested in finding, in getting our data also, because we are talking to the people directly. So they want us to tell them the kind of schemes and who are benefited, who are not benefited. So we were requested to share the data with them so that they can again revalidate with whatever records they have. So yes, government is doing something for the villagers, but it is taking time for them. Coming to agriculture, I'm not an expert in agriculture, so I'll not be able to answer many of the questions. But yes, community farming would be a much better way of going about it, because it involves a lot of activity. It involves the entire agricultural operation involves several activities where division of work is definitely going to help. So few people are involved in plowing, some in sowing, then harvesting, packaging of the products, looking for markets, transporting. So all these activities, if these are done in a very cooperative manner, then of course it is going to be very, very beneficial for the villagers. And believe you me, we have just started our work, and we are still to get in our hands a major product. But in next 3 to 4 months, we'll see the results of our efforts, and we'll also look at the way how marketing is done. But the mushroom marketing that they have done has been very, very successful in a cooperative manner. So I feel that cooperative marketing is definitely going to help the villagers, and this will take them out of their slumber, which they have fallen in, uh, considering the age group that they are in, and most of the youngsters have migrated from here. So yes, of course, cooperative farming is going to help, and that is the only way to help. That's what I feel as far as the villages are concerned. And as far as the rooftop agriculture is concerned, as I said, I'm not an expert in this field, but yes, this area is in a very high seismic zone, and since it is in a high seismic zone, I'm not very sure about the rooftop agriculture in the mountains, how beneficial it's going to be. But I'm not an expert, so I'll not be able to comment much on that. So if it is all right, if the people are satisfied, I'll stop here, or else I can uh, go on talking about it a little bit more.
I think the only one angle, perhaps, if you think you would like to comment from these set of questions, is that we have seen, as far as the modern agricultural practices are concerned, they've had some adverse impact, on the quality of soil and all other things, in the plains. So I believe one question wants us to kind of think about, will the adoption, of the agricultural practices, advanced scientific, is that going to be kind of good for this fragile ecology? I believe this is one question.
Yes, the experience that we have had in that particular locality is that the as far as scientific agriculture is concerned, we are only concentrating on certain parts like the system of plowing, the system of sowing. But as far as fertilizers are concerned, the fertilizers that they're going to use is the natural fertilizer. So all these people, all the villagers are collecting the cow dungs in their localities. And once the land was prepared for sowing, then of course all of them use the natural fertilizers. So I don't see any threat to the ecology as long as we follow these organic practices of agriculture, even if we employ scientific methods. So scientific methods doesn't mean that you have to use pesticides. We don't need to have pesticides. We can have different methods of protecting our crops. And there are not only pesticides, there are also mouse, that rats that affect the all these products. If you put in potato, then or if you put in basmati rice, the smell attracts the rats. So there are different ways of dealing with them. You don't necessarily have to use chemicals for that. Maybe a very mild chemical can be used for killing the larvas inside that. But what we are planning to do is to ensure that there is no larva in the field by taking care of the adult beetles. So there's a beetle trap kind of system. It's a very simple mechanism where you put a high voltage light and then put some drums with full of water, and the moment they hit the light, all the beetles, they simply go inside the water and they die. So once the adults are not there, you'll not have the larvas. And these dead beetles are very good source of food for the local fish pottery, the poultry people, all those who are having their poultry in their houses. So this can also be used for their fodder. So when we say scientific farming, we do not mean that we have to have chemical fertilizers or pesticides to be used. That is why it's a real organic product that is going to come up. And we don't intend to. That was the first mandate that all these project members decided, was not to use chemical fertilizers at all. That was the basic guideline that we had. It was a self-imposed kind of guideline for us, that we will not allow pesticides here. That was it. So there's every possibility that we can protect, we can have very good agricultural crop. Depending upon the suitability of the soil, we use the crops, and we can definitely market the organic products. In the name of organic products, people are simply minting money in places like Delhi. Is coming from the rural areas, and they are minting money here. So why not the villagers? They should also have some share in the benefit of this organic product, as they call it. It's in fashion these days to have organic products, and they don't have to do anything extra to bring about the organic products. They simply use their whatever is available with them. But then there are issues there also, but because the animals are less in that area, the problem is another one, that the leopards, Mr. Kaustubh was talking about the snow leopards. There are also leopards in that area who are known as goldars in the local terminologies. They come here and they kill the flying animals. They take away the dogs. They take away the dogs who are lighter to carry, but they kill the animals. And therefore, there's also this kind of a problem for them. But that problem we are not dealing at this point of time. We are mainly concerned about setting up the agriculture first, and then in due course of time, we will see what we can do about it with the help of the government agencies, of course. That's it.
Yeah, I think before we go on to the questions for Dr. Sharma, I think not to disappoint any of our attendees, only one last question, which I believe has not been kind of wholly addressed as of now, is that there is a question which says that how do you propose that the organic products, produced by these villagers or in this region can be marketed, as high value, premium, organic, authentic products?
There was some problem with the sound. Could you come up again, please? A little problem with the sound.
Sorry. Yeah. The question says that how can we market the products of this area, the organic products, as high value, premium, organic, authentic products?
Yes, so we need to have some kind of organization where we need to attach ourselves with them who are dealing. There are government agencies, and we have spoken to the district magistrate as well as the CDO, and they have also advised us about several organizations who are involved in the marketing, packaging, as well as marketing of the products. And these products are going to several parts of India. In fact, I'll tell you a very interesting episode there's a place called Garsand in Uttarakhand. And recently there was also some controversy about the earlier CM who wanted to shift the administrative capital to Garrison. Now, in that locality, there was a problem of human-wildlife conflict. And there, people were told to sow haldi on the land to protect it from the wild monkeys. And while doing this, they found that the haldi was so productive that they started picking up that. In fact, all other production stopped. They started producing only haldi, and the quality of haldi was so good, the turmeric was so good, that it is being sold as Garrison haldi, and it is being exported also out of India. So there is a very strong possibility of the community effort and the effort from the government agencies to bring out these organic products in the market. And of course, the marketing has to be done very well. People must be sure about it. They must have some kind of authenticity behind these products. So, but of course, when you talk about authenticity, unless one tries itself, we also tried some of the stuff of that area, and we found that they were really good, and which we used to have when we were very young. When we used to go to the villages, we used to have that kind of lentils, and now we are trying those lentils again, organic ones, which are very, very tasty, and which has a different taste than what we have here. Everything is polished in this market, in the markets of Delhi that we get. Everything is polished, and there we get exact organic things to eat. So once we start trying these and bringing it to the market, marketing has to be done very, very well, and the packaging has to be done well. The packaging also has to give enough information about the authenticity of the organic product. So this is how we can help the villagers to sell their products, because our job is not only confined to the augmentation of agricultural products, but they also need to have a very secured market. So we'll be trying that also by getting in touch with various government agencies in Uttarakhand as well as in Delhi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rakesh ji. Now I think I will take up the questions, for Dr. Sharma. And the first question says, how, according to you, can we complete sustainable development goal with the help of the local ambassador?
Not sure I understand the question well enough, but I think the key, the only point with respect to the sustainable development mentioned earlier, anywhere between 10 to 14 of the 17 sustainable development goals. Because a snow leopard conservation program is not just about saving one animal. Ultimately, not even a penny of conservation money goes to the pocket of the snow leopards. It goes to the local communities, it goes to the local people, it goes to the protection agencies or the rangers who are working there. So I don't know if I answered it correctly. I'm sorry, I couldn't understand the question very well, but yeah,
I believe
that's...
that was the spirit of the question.
Sure.
I believe the SDGs, and linked to the conservation of the wildlife. So the next question says, do you think the countries and the United Nations are serious on this issue? The efforts of especially the wildlife conservation and the snow leopard. And are they cooperating with people? Have you ever faced any issue while working for this cause?
I'd like to believe, yes, that they're all very serious. And evidence towards that is the Bishkek Declaration 2013 and the Bishkek Declaration 2017, which are signed and endorsed at the highest levels by the governments of all the 12 snow leopard range countries. And they include, start from Afghanistan, China, India, Mongolia, Pakistan, and Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. So you have 12 countries, and each of these countries has formally endorsed these programs. The United Nations Development Program, along with the Global Environment Facility and other partners such as USAID and United Nations Environment Program, they're all investing their time and resources in the region to develop prototypes, to develop toolkits, to implement programs that can support the local communities, and at the same time help conservation of biodiversity. So yes, I would like to believe that they're all serious about it, for sure. Sorry, was there a second part to this question?
Yeah, the second part said, then have you ever faced any issues?
I think to face difficulty is part of the solution, right? If you don't face difficulty, then there's something not right. So we always face challenges. There is no dearth of challenges, but I think those challenges make the solutions that much more acceptable and usable and successful, if I may say so.
So salute to your spirit. I think you are dealing with difficulties as challenges. So definitely. And the next question says that as far as the infrastructure projects are concerned, they disturb, the habitat of the wildlife. And these are primarily responsible for causing these disturbances and the intrusion of the wildlife into human settlements, etc.
Yeah.
So what is the reason why the infrastructure projects, are being pursued by the governments and they do not realize these implications?
So I think just a sort of a rider to begin with. We don't want projects to not be there. They are important for all of us. We all use them, and it won't be. It'll be very morally incorrect for us to say that, oh, there should be no infrastructure. You're sitting in a big city and saying that in these remote areas you don't need infrastructure. That's not the right thing. That's just incorrect. The point I want to highlight here is that it has to be properly planned, appropriately planned, and carefully weighed against all odds. We don't factor the costs that local communities pay or the biodiversity pays into the cost benefit analysis of these projects, and that's where we're probably failing. So among many other things, one rather small but valuable effort towards that is to do even something as simple as economic valuation of some of the ecosystem services. At least you have a number to start with. Yes, we know you cannot put a value to the life of a bird's nest, or you cannot put a value to clean air, right? But there are certain provisional services that you can still put value to, and that's a starting point. So I think the reason a lot of the damage has happened and has been happening is because of our failure to factor in these costs that are paid by us only. Nobody else is paying those costs. It's us who pay these costs. And we have so many examples where roads or dams which are prepared or that are developed in places which are high risk or causing other ecological damages, they've eventually cost much more to the exchequer. So I think the key is to be to do better planning and not just look at one lens of how many people are going to, how much money is going to be pumped in. How much money is going to be pumped in does get negated by how much of services that nature already is providing there, or how many other benefits that the local people are already getting there. How is that getting negated or cancelled out by whatever little amount of money that's going in? So I think that's where it becomes important for us to really highlight those issues. And one reason why I mentioned earlier that it's important for more and more people to talk about it, because it's only then that conservation issues will become a priority and not an optional issue for governments and corporates and private sector to deal with. It's not a bottleneck. It's an important aspect of development.
The last question says, what is the status of India vis-a-vis the use of AI in snow leopard projects?
Right. So this AI tool that I mentioned about, it's at this point in time, what it does is it takes hundreds of thousands of pictures that we are getting from camera traps spread across multiple areas, scans through them, and separates which pictures have snow leopards on them. The next level where we're working on is we will be trying to, in fact, we're already working on it and it's working fairly successfully, to identify individuals based on their spot patterns. So that will be the level 2. But these tools are open source. None of these is a tool that you have to buy or you have to get special access to. They're all open source. If you know any of the programming tools, I'll be happy to communicate those to you. But these are being used by teams within India as well. Very recently, I think about a month ago, the state of Himachal Pradesh revealed the first ever statewide estimate of snow leopards. They estimated somewhere around approximately 53 snow leopards. And part of that work included using of machine learning and maximum likelihoods.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a very lively session and an equally lively question and answer session. And I thank Dr. Rakesh Kumar as well as Dr. Kaustubh Sharma for sharing their very, very hands-on experience on working with the Patia cluster of villages and the snow leopard respectively. Thank you so much. More than the points highlighted, which we have summarized earlier, the points during the talk, what is really very, very important and very commendable is this kind of dedication, passion, and expertise, which we know you enshrine and you embody. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the
Thank you
opportunity.
very much.
We have summarized the session and the question answer session as well. However, this is the valedictory session. And as chair of this valedictory session, now it is my duty to take you over the territory that has been mapped during this conference and the conclusion and suggestions that seem to speak out to us. So please allow me to take you through the conference through this short video that we have made on the conference. I will try to present a brief gist as succinctly as possible, but do bear with me. As I mentioned earlier, the conference has elicited participation from literateurs, researchers, journalists, documentary filmmakers, photographers, entrepreneurs, naturalists, academicians, and environmentalists. Several participants being all three: architects, sportspersons, and experts into heritage management. The literary perspective has been commendably brought out by Ms. Namita Gokhale, Mr. Tenzin Sundu, Professor Malashri Lal, Dr. Prem Kumari Srivastava, Dr. Anu Jaydev, Dr. Charu Arya, Ms. Navnita Deka, Ms. Mridula Sharma, Ms. Bindu Gurtu, and Ms. Shilpa Gupta. We had Mr. Hridesh Joshi and Mr. Sushil Bahuguna sharing their vast experience of reporting from the front lines, the flagging and documenting of issues pertaining to Himalayan settlements. Mr. Ashish Bhattacharjee and Ms. Johanna van Gruzen mesmerized us with their photo essays, the former on the festivities of Himalayas and the latter on the culture of Ladakh. The two women entrepreneurs working tirelessly in the remote recesses of the Himalayas demonstrated the potential of innovative and customized strategies for bringing green tourism and livelihoods to the Himalayan region. We had to miss the opportunity of listening to two of our naturalists, Dr. Khudsar and Dr. Chandawat. But the other two, Mr. Mohan Singh and Dr. Kaustubh Sharma, have trained their lens on the pine tree and the snow leopard, respectively. Academicians and environmentalists, Mr. Govind Singh, Ms. Shweta Dhiman, Mr. Praveen Kumar, Mr. G.H. Mir, Dr. Nirmal Kumar, Dr. Rakesh Kumar, have shared their work and research on water conservation, anthropogenic impacts on Himalayan biodiversity, need for love, understanding, and empathy for the hardy mountains, dietary and dressing traditions in Kashmir, monetizing the assets in the Himalayas for preservation and empowerment, and organic and sustainable agricultural practices. Architects, Tanya Lal and Nikita Verma explored means of sustainable livelihoods for women, and the need to integrate vernacular architecture in building projects in hill regions. Cyclists and trekker Salvat Hamra exhorted us to engage on all Wordsworthian levels with the mountains: physical, sensual, emotional, moral, and spiritual poetic. Ms. Shilpa Gupta and Ms. Chonzin Angmu presented the very critical perspective in the ability-disability debate of looking at aspirations of adventure and exercise of persons with disabilities, not through any special lens, but through a universal lens. Gaurav Kumar Pal came in with the heritage management expertise as he outlined the application of geospatial techniques to heritage mapping and conservation. I would just like to very briefly point out the type of voices that have emerged during the conference. You can see that as far as the presentations on literature are concerned, they have dwelt on the third pole of the world that the Himalayas are, the oral cultures, the indigenous cultures, the syncretic cultures that dwell in the Himalayas. The inspiration and influence, spiritual influence that we derive from these mountains, as well as the languages, narratives, deities, religions of the Himalayas that we need to pay attention to. We had focus on Ladakh, Tibet, Chamba, Uttarakhand, Kumaon, Kashmir during these sessions. And we also had iconic writers like Stephen Alter, Ruskin Bond, Kashmiri women writers, drawn into this discourse. And of course, we dwelt on the travel tropes which are enshrined, in the Himalayas. If the verbal, so to say, representation of the Himalayas was so profuse, then of course, the visual documentation can hardly be left behind. And we had the photographers who showed us, in fact, the Himalayas, the land of the divine, and Ladakh, the land of the high passes, through their scintillating photo features. We could see the colorful and collective cultures, of the Himalayas. We could also see the pious, recreational, and all other aspects, in fact, of, as it is said, the Jivan Shaili of the Himalayas. After the literary and visual, we had the journalists, in fact, and their contribution can hardly be undermined. The journalists and the documentary filmmakers. The documentary filmmakers trained their lens on the deserted villages. They showed us the anthropogenic interferences, in these areas. They also highlighted the tourism, whether it is a boon or a bane. And at the same time, we had Mr. Sushil Bahuguna, who was very pertinently, he raised the question that can the policies, in fact, made from the mind, and not the heart, and made by the people in the plains and not in the hills, as far as, the people in the Himalayas are concerned. The entrepreneurs definitely brought in the discourse on development, for whom, how, the whole idea of development, and of course, the remedy of this mindless development was suggested to be the development of the local capital. The emphasis on development of the local capital was, so to say, the suggestion of the entrepreneurs. The naturalists have taken us through the ecosystems, the sensitivity of them, the native species, and the ecosystem services. And of course, we can see how the innovative strategies and empathetic policies, the promotion of local traditions, as well as, kind of steering away from unnecessary construction and very stereotypical ideas of tourism have come in through, in fact, these interventions. The architects have shown us, the women and livelihoods, the importance of vernacular architecture, the green practices and local products. If they are all integrated, in fact, with the modern practices, that will in a way take away a lot of stress and a lot of, we can say, duress, in fact, from these regions. The heritage management, just like Dr. Sharma showed us the application of AI. Similarly, the heritage management, perspective showed us how technology and the application of technology, in fact, can help us map and conserve heritage conservation in the modern ways. Finally, we had the sports persons who added, in fact, this very important idea of engaging, with the mountains, not staying away, not like the webinar and not like the confines of our drawing rooms, but actually engaging, in fact, with the mountains, prepare, resolve, engage, and definitely they paid a tribute, the sports persons, one of them who was person with disability. It was she, in fact, I think, who kind of underlines it all by underlining the universality of the adventurous spirit. So this is the conference, that we have had so many interventions, so many messages, and so many, so to say, course of actions, to chart from here on. And I believe that is the idea. A conference can never be an end in itself. It is only a kind of a motivation. It is only a kind of a, we can say, a brainstorming. And unless it has something to show in the field, unless it has something to show on the paper, the objective of the conference is not complete. And let us assure all our mentors, collaborators, partners, and resource persons that this is how we wish to take it forward. Thank you all. Thank you so much. And with this, now is the time, in fact, to propose a formal vote of thanks to, kind of wrap up this conference. And I invite Dr. Shilpa Gupta, who is the co-convener of the conference, to please formally propose a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Sangeeta ma'am. Am I audible? Hello?
You are Shilpa. We can hear you.
Yes, thank you. Okay. So finally, it's time to say goodbye. What a conference this has been, full of enthusiasm, energy, a gamut of scholars from different fields coming together to discuss the issues and concepts relating to Neath the World's Roof, cultural landscapes of Himalaya, communities in the subcontinent. It will be well agreed upon that it has been an enriching experience for all of us. The pandemic could not become a barrier of any sort for us to connect and deliberate on this important issue. The video conferencing mode rather helped us connect with scholars from various parts of the country and the world. Before I proceed with the formal part of the vote of thanks, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the InSearch team for giving me an opportunity to be a part of the conference core committee and also allowing me to give this vote of thanks. Each task that I have been given has only made me learn more. I would like to thank Dr. Anupama Jaydev for guiding me through the course of this conference like a friend, Dr. Sangeeta Mittal for being the backbone of this conference team, Dr. Neeraj Kumar Singh for shouldering the responsibilities with poise. Thank you so much. Now, the formal vote of thanks. I, on behalf of the conference committee, extend our heartfelt thanks to Dr. Kaustubh Sharma, Assistant Director of Conservation Policy and Partnerships, Snow Leopard Trust, and International Coordinator, Global Snow Leopard and Ecosystem Protection Program. Thanks, sir, for joining us today and enlightening us with your kind words. A heartfelt thanks to Mr. Tenzing Sundu, Tibetan author and activist. Sir, thank you for enriching us through your keynote speech. I would also like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Ms. Namita Gokhale, Professor Mala Srilal, and Dr. Prem Kumari Srivastava for setting the tone of the conference in the inaugural session with their kind words. Special thanks to our invited speakers and resource persons consisting of academicians, writers, activists, journalists, photographers, documentary filmmakers, environmentalists, naturalists, community leaders, social entrepreneurs, architects, mountaineers, sportspersons. Thank you, Mr. Hridayesh Joshi, Mr. Ashish Bhattacharya, Dr. Praveen Kumar, Mr. Mohan Singh, Dr. G.H. Neer, Dr. Govind Singh, Ms. Joanna Van Goosen, Ms. Indrani Das Gupta, Ms. Tanya Lal, Dr. Charu Arya, Dr. Anupama Jaydev, Dr. Nirmal Kumar, Ms. Nikita Verma, Mr. Kshitij Agarwal, Ms. Purabhi Sarkar, Ms. Nabanita Dika, Ms. Malika Virdi, Mr. Sushil Bahuguna, Ms. Shweta Dhiman, Mr. Salvad Hamra, Ms. Chanzing Angmu, Ms. Bindu Gutu, Ms. Mridula Sharma, Mr. Gaurav Kumar Pal, Dr. Rakesh Kumar. They shared their scholarly insights, experiences, and knowledge over the course of 6 days, giving the conference its true meaning. We are grateful to Dr. Fayaz Kutsar, Dr. Raghu Chandavat, who, although could not make it to the conference, supported us immensely in our endeavor. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our collaborators, IJDUS, Agrizen, Umang, Rath NGO, Blackline Productions, IQACDS College, Katihar. Thank you. We are thankful to fellow colleagues and research scholars who joined us from various universities, colleges, and institutes across India and the world. We appreciate and commend the valuable inputs received from our attendees who initiated the exchange of thoughts and ideas during the question-answer sessions. Now, it is the time to thank our very own conference team, without whom one could not have envisioned the conference. Thank you, Anu ma'am, for conceptualizing the conference. Soumya ma'am and Pratibha ma'am for drawing up the conference schedule with such efficiency. Sangeeta ma'am for designing the PPTs with perfection. Vandana ma'am for helping out with the e-certificates. Shireen ma'am and Natasha ma'am for managing promotion on social media. Neeraj sir for coordinating with student teams and taking care of nitty-gritties that kept kept cropping up during the course of the conference. Swaminathan sir for helping us to connect with some of our speakers. Amit sir and Geetika for helping us out as our tech support team and taking care of the minutest details of technology that came into use during this conference. Having saved the best for last, I extend my gratitude to the student volunteer team. They have been the backbone of this conference. They took care of hosting, anchoring, tech support, Q&A sessions, photography, rapporteuring, e-certificates, and other conference materials, promotions, and also asked questions to the speakers. Wow, they run the whole conference. Special thanks to our dear Anika Kapoor, Dhruv Rahal, Ankita Sharma, Abhinandini Sinha, Kamal Kant for their 24/7 service for the conference. Thank you, all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shilpa. Special mention to both our speakers of today, Kaustubh ji and Rakesh ji. Rakesh ji, thank you so much for taking out such valuable time, and I cannot really say how inspiring both of the presentations have been, and we really think that we should be kind of taken under your, so to say, patronage and tutelage, so that we also learn and our students also learn a little bit, in fact, to contribute to these very valuable ecosystems. Thank you, Rakesh ji. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kaustubh. This is a valedictory session. We have taken you through the conference. We've also presented the conference highlights, and Shilpa has presented her vote of thanks. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your audience. I thank the audience, in fact, all the attendees also to be here with us in this last session of the conference. Any remarks, Kaustubh ji or Rakesh ji, before we end the conference?
It has been a wonderful experience, and I was not able to hear many of these because I was on the field trip.
Okay.
But I feel extremely grateful to be a part of this entire exercise, where all the people have joined together to do something for the Himalayas. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
And I'd just like to, really not much to add, but just like to congratulate the organizers and all of you for being among the first few online conferences last year. I think yours was among the first to have gone online and really set the stage for the rest of the world to follow. So congratulations for being a trendsetter, if I may say so. And this year I saw a few of the talks, and what an amazing group of people you were able to bring together. It's an honor to be able to speak in a conference which was attended by such stalwarts. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak, and thank you for doing what you're doing. Really kudos to the whole team out there.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Hope to have you on board and be with you throughout, in fact, on several issues. Before we end the conference, Anu, Neeraj ji, anyone would like to say anything?
I'm really thankful to the entire set of people, especially Kaustubh and Rakesh ji, who are here for the valedictory session, as also to other speakers who have really been wonderful. Students, yes, we have hardly met. Sir, they are all first year students. We have hardly met even on a single day, but only through online interactions. They were such a big support. In fact, they supported us, and we as teachers, we are actually constrained with all these technological tools and the social media hypes. But they were in a position to build it. So thank you very much, dear students, and all speakers and all my fellow colleagues. We have been working together, and we shall be working together in our future endeavors also. Thank you.
Anu? Is she there? Or else we end the conference? Because she is the convener, so I thought she might want to have the last word.
Sangeeta, can we take a picture?
Photo. As is the practice in all sessions, we end the session with a group photo. I request everyone to please switch on the cameras, the videos. So Anika would click the pic.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Taken, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So with this,
All of you.
end this session, and I thank everyone once again.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Anika,
Thank
are you
you,
going to
Rakesh
end?
sir. Thanks everybody. भाई सारे लोग धन्यवाद, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सारे. I think we are all, ये पूरी टीम ही रह गई है जो volunteers वाली है, और सारे colleagues हैं.
We also have Dr. Anandaditya, who has been there in the conference most of the sessions.
Yeah.
If you would want to speak something to us, sir, but he will have to be made co-host. Can we make him co-host?
Ma'am, actually, in between I got disconnected, so Gidika ma'am is host now. She'll have to make him.
Dr. Anandaditya. इनको मैंने सब सेशन में देखा है, उन्होंने बड़े हमारे सेशन.
Yeah, he has been there. So.
Hello, are you here?
Yes.
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 We can hear you.
Yeah, I will hope that I will meet with all of you again.
Yes.
And next time, I want to that we will talk about the Himalayan floody areas of the Bihar and UP area.
Acha.
Yeah, because all of the rivers of Bihar and UP is carrying so many types of particles, stones, sands, and other parts of the earth landslides, which carrying by the rivers in flooded period and silted all rivers and barrages. So I want to talk about this area and this problem. We will discuss with.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for your feedback, sir. Definitely.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, next conference is slated for this Indo-Gangetic Basin itself. So probably we'll take up that. Yes. Anything else? Anybody else?
I think we can end the session now.
Yeah, I think so. सब कुछ सारा सब कुछ ठीक ठाक ये हो गया. And thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay,
हम ऐसे ही करते रहते हैं और आगे भी करते रहेंगे. अगला प्रोजेक्ट मैंने हिंट दे दिया है, उसको करते हैं. भूल वाला जो है डेफिनेटली